Han Ta-su stood in the cold metal room and looked at his own reflection in the dark window. Outside, the stars moved slowly as the ship traveled through space. He was far from Earth now, very far, and he was never going back. 3 months ago, he had been a soldier, a good one. He had fought in the resistance war when the Vozens first came to Earth. He had watched cities burn. He had buried friends. He had killed enemies. And when the war ended with humanity's surrender, he thought his fighting days were over. He was wrong. The Vozen Empire wanted peace. But their idea of peace was simple. Humanity would pay tribute. Humanity would share technology. And humanity would send one of their own to marry a Vozen princess. A symbol of unity, they called it. A joke, Taesu called it. Earth's leaders had chosen him for this honor. He had no family, no wife, no children. No one would miss him. He was perfect for the job. Expendable. The door behind him opened with a soft hiss. A Vozen soldier stepped inside. He was tall, almost 7 feet, with pale blue skin and silver eyes. His face showed nothing but contempt. "Human," the soldier said. "We arrive at Vassar Prime in 6 hours. Clean yourself. You smell like your dying planet." Taesu did not respond. He had learned quickly that responding only made things worse. The Vozens did not see him as a person. They saw him as an animal that had learned to walk on 2 legs. The soldier left, and Taesu returned to looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was spinning. His people were rebuilding. They were surviving, as humans always did. And he was here, alone, flying toward a life he did not choose. 6 hours later, the ship landed on Vassar Prime. Taesu stepped out onto the platform and felt the weight of an alien world for the first time. The air was thinner here. The gravity was lighter. The sky was purple, and 3 moons hung above the horizon like watching eyes. Soldiers lined the path from the landing platform to the palace gates. None of them saluted. None of them showed respect. They stared at Taesu like he was something unpleasant they had stepped in. At the gates, a group of nobles waited. They wore long robes of silver and gold, and their faces were painted with ancient symbols. In the center stood a woman, Princess Lyra Voss. She was beautiful in the way a blade is beautiful. Sharp, cold, dangerous. Her skin was pale white, almost glowing. Her hair was black as the space between stars. Her eyes were gold, and they looked at Taesu with absolute disgust. She did not speak to him. Instead, she turned to her attendant and said, "Take this creature to the preparation chambers. Make sure it is presentable for the ceremony." Taesu was led away without a word. He was bathed by servants who would not touch him directly, using long brushes instead. He was dressed in Vozen formal clothes that did not fit properly. He was given no food, no water, no explanation. The wedding happened that evening. Taesu stood on one side of the great hall. Lyra stood on the other. Between them was a priest who spoke words in a language Taesu did not understand. There was no music, no celebration, no guests on his side of the room. The Vozen nobles watched with bored expressions. Some laughed quietly among themselves. One general, a massive warrior named Kale Morn, made no effort to hide his amusement. He looked at Taesu and slowly drew his finger across his throat. Lyra spoke her vows without looking at her husband. Her voice was flat, empty. She might as well have been reading a grocery list. When it was Taesu's turn to speak, he said the words he had been taught. His pronunciation was bad. Several nobles laughed. Then it was over. They were married. There was no kiss, no embrace, no acknowledgement that anything meaningful had happened. Lyra turned and walked out of the hall, and Taesu was left standing alone at the altar, wondering what his life had become. That night, Servants led him to the royal chambers. He expected to share a room with his new wife. Instead, he was taken to a small door beside the main bedroom. A servant's quarters. A closet with a bed. "You stay here," the servant said. "Do not leave unless called." The door closed. Taesu heard a lock click into place. He sat on the small bed and listened to the silence. This was his life now. A prisoner in everything but name. A husband who was not a husband. A symbol of peace that everyone treated like garbage. Then he heard footsteps outside his door. They stopped. There was a long pause, and then Lyra's voice came through the wood, cold and clear. "Listen carefully, human. I do not know why my father chose to disgrace our bloodline with this arrangement. I do not care. You are not my husband. You are a symbol of politics that I am forced to tolerate. Stay invisible. Stay silent. Do not speak to me. Do not look at me. Do not exist in any way that I am forced to notice." Taesu said nothing. "If you do these things," Lyra continued, "you might survive here. My people do not like your kind. They would be happy to see you dead. I would not lift a finger to save you. So stay small. Stay quiet. That is how you live." Her footsteps faded away. Taesu lay back on the hard bed and stared at the ceiling. He thought about Earth. He thought about the battles he had fought. He thought about the friends he had lost and the enemies he had killed. The Vozens thought he was weak. They thought humans were soft and stupid. They looked at his smaller body and his shorter lifespan and saw nothing worth respecting. They did not know what he was. They did not know that Earth's history was written in blood. That humans had been fighting and killing each other for thousands of years before the Vozens even knew their planet existed. They did not know that Taesu had survived battles that would have broken their strongest warriors. He closed his eyes and smiled. They had brought him here as a symbol of humanity's defeat. A trophy. A pet. They expected him to be grateful for the scraps they threw at his feet. But Taesu was not grateful. He was patient. He was watching. He was learning. And one day, they would understand their mistake. For now, he would play his role. He would be invisible. He would be silent. He would let them think they had won. But Han Taesu was a soldier of Earth, and soldiers do not surrender. They wait, they adapt, they survive. And when the time is right, they strike. The first night of his marriage ended in silence and darkness. But somewhere deep in his chest, a fire was burning. It was small now, just a spark. But sparks become flames, and flames become storms. The Vozens had no idea what they had invited into their house. 6 months had passed since the wedding. 6 months of silence. 6 months of being treated like dirt. Han Taesu walked through the palace corridors like a ghost. Servants pretended he did not exist. Nobles turned their backs when he approached. Guards sometimes accidentally pushed him into walls. No one ever apologized that he ate alone. He slept alone. He existed alone. The Vozens had a word for him. They called him soft blood. It was an insult. Humans were weak, they said. Humans died too easily. Humans were barely more than animals who had learned to build machines. Taesu heard this every day. He absorbed every insult, every cruel joke, every act of disrespect. And he said nothing, but he was not doing nothing. Every day, he walked through the palace. He counted the guards. He memorized their schedules. He learned which doors were locked and which ones could be opened. He studied the weapons the soldiers carried. He watched their training exercises from windows and doorways. He learned their language. Not from teachers, because no one would teach him. He learned by listening. He sat in corners during court gatherings and absorbed every word. Within 3 months, He understood most of what was being said. Within 5 months, he could speak it fluently. He did not tell anyone this at night. He found his way into the palace library. The doors were not locked because no one imagined the human would be interested in Vossen books. He read military histories. He studied their tactics. He learned about their enemies. He learned about the Kethrin Collective. The Kethrin were a warrior race from the far edge of the galaxy. They were bigger than Vossens, stronger, more brutal. They had been expanding their territory for decades, and they were getting closer to Vossen space every year. War was coming. Taesu could see it clearly. The Vossens could not. They were too proud, too confident. They believed their empire was unbeatable. Taesu knew better. Pride had destroyed empires on Earth many times. One evening, during a grand court celebration, General Kale Morn approached Taesu. The general was drunk on Vossen wine. His face was red, and his eyes were cruel. "Look at this," Kale said loudly, so everyone could hear. "The human pet has wandered out of his cage." The nobles laughed. Taesu stood still. Kale walked closer. He towered over Taesu, almost 2 feet taller. He leaned down until their faces were close. "You know what I think," Kale said. "I think we should have destroyed your planet. I told the king this, but he wanted a symbol of peace. So we got you instead." He spat on the floor near Taesu's feet. "A waste of mercy." Taesu looked at the general. He did not blink. He did not move. He simply stared. Something flickered in Kale's eyes. Just for a moment. Something that looked almost like uncertainty. Then it was gone, and the general laughed and walked away. Taesu returned to his small room and continued his studies. 2 weeks later, everything changed. Princess Lyra fell ill. At first, the Vossen doctors thought it was a simple sickness. Then she got worse. Her skin turned gray. Her breathing became shallow. Her heartbeat slowed until it was barely there. The doctors were confused. They had never seen anything like this. They gave her medicine after medicine, but nothing worked. King Doran brought healers from across the empire. None of them could help. Lyra was dying. Taesu heard the servants talking about it in the hallways. He saw the fear on their faces. He watched the doctors running back and forth with worried expressions. He also recognized the symptoms. During the resistance war on Earth, he had seen soldiers die the same way. Gray skin, slow heartbeat, gradual organ failure. It was poison. A very specific kind of poison that had been developed on Earth as a biological weapon. Someone had used Earth technology to try to kill Lyra. Taesu knew he should stay quiet. Lyra had treated him badly. She had locked him in a closet. She had ignored him completely. She had shown him nothing but contempt, but he could not watch her die. That night, he picked the lock on his door. He moved through the palace like a shadow, avoiding guards with ease. He reached the medical wing and found the laboratory where the doctors kept their equipment. He worked quickly. He knew the poison. He knew the antidote. It was simple chemistry, and Vossens had all the ingredients in their lab. They just did not know what to do with them. Within an hour, he had created the cure. He put it in a small bottle and placed it on the table where the doctors would find it. Then he returned to his room and locked the door behind him. The next morning, the doctors found the antidote. They gave it to Lyra. Within 3 days, she was recovering. Within a week, she was standing again. The doctors could not explain where the cure had come from. They took credit for it themselves, claiming they had finally found the right combination of medicines. But someone knew the truth. One night, Taesu heard footsteps outside his door. The lock clicked open. Lyra stepped inside. She looked different. The arrogance was still there, but something else was in her eyes now. Something like confusion. Maybe even respect. How did you know? she asked. Taisu sat up on his bed. Know what? Do not play games with me, human. The guards saw you on the security recordings. You went to the laboratory. You made the antidote. She stepped closer. How did you know what was killing me? Taisu was silent for a moment. Then he said, the poison was developed on Earth during our wars. I recognized the symptoms. Lyra stared at him. Your people created a weapon like that? To use on each other? My people have created many weapons like that. We've spent thousands of years finding new ways to kill each other. That poison was one of the kinder ones. Something shifted in Lyra's expression. Why did you save me? I have treated you terribly. I called you an animal. I locked you in this room like a prisoner. Taisu stood up. For the first time, he looked directly into her golden eyes. Because, he said, no one deserves to die alone and afraid. Not even someone who hates me. Lyra was silent for a long time. She seemed to be searching for words, but none came. Finally, she turned and walked toward the door. She stopped at the threshold. The door will not be locked tonight, she said quietly. Or any night after this. Then she was gone. Taisu stood alone in his small room. Something had changed. He could feel it in the air. The ice between them had cracked. Just a little. Just enough. He was still invisible. He was still despised. But now, one person in this entire empire knew what he was capable of. It was a beginning. In the months that followed, Lyra began watching him more carefully. She noticed how he moved through the palace. She noticed the intelligence in his eyes. She noticed that he understood their language perfectly, even though he pretended not to. She never said anything about these observations. But sometimes, when they passed in the corridors, she would nod at him. Just slightly. Just enough for him to see the invisible husband was becoming visible. And soon, the entire empire would know his name. 1 year had passed since Han Taisu arrived on Vasa Prime. 1 year of learning. 1 year of waiting. 1 year of watching the empire from the shadows. Now, war had come. The Kethran Collective had attacked 3 border systems without warning. Their fleets were massive. Their soldiers were brutal. They showed no mercy and took no prisoners. Within 2 weeks, 50 million Vosan citizens were dead. King Doran called his war council together in the Great Hall. Generals and admirals gathered around a holographic map of the empire. They argued and planned and boasted about how quickly they would crush the Kethran threat. Taisu stood in the back of the room. He was allowed to attend now after saving Lyra's life. No one paid attention to him. He was still the invisible human, the soft blood, the joke. General Kale Morn presented the battle strategy. He pointed at the map and explained how the Vosan fleet would meet the Kethran in open combat at the Orion Passage. Their ships were faster. Their weapons were stronger. Victory was certain. Taisu listened carefully. And as he listened, his heart sank. The plan was terrible. It was the kind of plan that looked good on paper, but failed completely in reality. Kale was assuming the Kethran would fight the way Vosans fought. He was assuming they would follow the same rules. He was assuming they would be honorable. Taisu knew better. He had read about the Kethran. He had studied their past battles. They did not fight with honor. They fought with brutality and deception. They would never meet the Vosan fleet in open combat. They would ambush it. Prince Raiden, Lyra's older brother, noticed Taisu standing in the corner. A cruel smile spread across his face. Look, he said loudly. The princess's pet human has come to learn about real warfare. Tell me, Softblood, what do your people know about battle? You surrender to anyone who threatens you. The room laughed. Taisu remained silent. Raiden walked closer. Perhaps you have an opinion? Perhaps you think you know better than our generals? Please, share your primitive wisdom with us. Taishu looked at Lyra. She was watching him with an expression he could not read. He looked at King Doran. He looked at the generals. They were all waiting for him to embarrass himself. Fine. Your plan will fail, Taishu said. The room went silent. Kael Morn's face turned red with anger. What did you say? Taishu stepped forward. Your plan assumes the Catherine will meet you at the Orion Passage. They will not. They will split their fleet into 3 groups. One group will attack your supply lines while you wait at the passage. One group will circle around to hit your homeworld defenses. And one group will wait until your fleet is out of position, then strike from behind. He pointed at the map. You will lose your supply ships in the first 3 days. You will lose your main fleet in the first week. And within a month, Catherine's soldiers will be standing in this room. Complete silence. King Doran leaned forward on his throne. And how do you know this, human? Because this is what we would do, Taishu said simply. On Earth, we have fought wars like this for thousands of years. The strong do not always win. The smart do. The Catherine are smart. Your generals are not. Kael Morn slammed his fist on the table. How dare you? I have won 100 battles. I have conquered entire systems. And you think a soft blood from a conquered planet can teach me about war? Taishu looked at him calmly. We will see. He turned and walked out of the room. Behind him, he heard the generals laughing and mocking his words. He heard Kael Morn calling him a fool. He heard Prince Raiden making jokes about primitive humans. Only Lyra was silent. 3 weeks later, the Vazan fleet engaged the Catherine at the Orion Passage. Everything happened exactly as Taishu predicted. The Catherine split their forces. They hit the supply lines first, destroying hundreds of cargo ships carrying food and ammunition. They sent a small fleet to threaten Vassar Prime, forcing King Doran to pull defenders back home. And when the main Vazan fleet was out of position, confused, and running low on supplies, the Catherine struck from behind. The Battle of Orion Passage was a massacre. Kael Morn lost 3 of his flagship carriers. 40,000 Vazan soldiers died in a single day. The fleet retreated in chaos, leaving entire systems undefended. It was the worst military defeat in Vazan history. That night, Lyra came to Taishu's room. She did not knock. She simply walked in and closed the door behind her. You knew, she said. You knew exactly what would happen. Taishu nodded. Lyra sat down on the edge of his bed. She looked tired, scared. For the first time, she looked vulnerable. How? She asked. How could you know? Taishu sat beside her. Because I am human. And humans have been killing each other since we first learned to pick up rocks. Every trick the Catherine used, we invented centuries ago. Every deception, every ambush, every betrayal. We have done it all. To each other. Again and again. He looked at his hands. On Earth, there was a war called World War II. It lasted 6 years and killed 60 million people. There was another war before that which killed 20 million. And another before that. And another. Our history is written in blood. Lyra stared at him. How have you not destroyed yourselves? We almost did. Many times. We came so close to extinction that we learned. We adapted. We became very, very good at war. And we became very, very good at surviving. Lyra was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, what do we do now? The Catherine are winning. Our fleet is destroyed. Our generals are fools. Taishu looked at her. Your generals are fools. But your soldiers are brave. And you still have ships. You still have weapons. You still have time. Time for what? To learn, Taishu said. To fight the way humans fight. Dirty. Clever. Without honor. without rules. The Kethrin think they are brutal. They have never seen what humanity can do when we are fighting for survival. Lyra looked into his eyes. She saw something there that she had never noticed before. Something cold. Something dangerous. Something that made her realize just how much she had underestimated him. "Teach me," she whispered. Before he could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Soldiers ran through the corridors, shouting orders. Someone was attacking. Tasu moved to the door, but before he could reach it, 4 soldiers burst in. They were not wearing Vazan uniforms. They were wearing black armor with no markings. Assassins. Kael Morn had sent them. The general was embarrassed by his defeat and needed someone to blame. The human who had predicted his failure was the perfect target. The soldiers drew their weapons. Energy blades hummed to life in their hands. Lyra screamed. But Taesu did not scream. He did not run. He did not hide. He moved. 20 seconds later, all 4 soldiers were dead on the floor. Lyra stood frozen against the wall. She had never seen anything like it. Taesu had not used weapons. He had used his bare hands. He had moved faster than she thought was possible. He had broken bones and crushed throats and ended lives with the efficiency of a machine. He was not even breathing hard. Taesu wiped blood from his hands and looked at her. "What are you?" she whispered. He stepped over the bodies and walked toward her. His eyes were calm, cold, not the eyes of a victim, the eyes of a predator. "I am what humanity made me," he said. "I am a soldier. I am a survivor. And I am done being invisible." Lyra looked at the dead assassins. She looked at the blood on his hands. She looked at the man she had dismissed as a pet and a symbol. She finally understood. She had married a monster. And for the first time since the war began, she felt hope. 18 months into the marriage. The Kethrin Collective had pushed deep into Vazan territory. 5 more systems had fallen. The Empire was bleeding. And King Doran was desperate. That desperation led him to make a decision he would regret for the rest of his life. He gave Han Taesu a fleet. It was not a good fleet. It was a collection of damaged ships, old cruisers, and vessels that were scheduled for scrap. The soldiers assigned to it were outcasts, criminals, failures, men and women who had been thrown away by the Vazan military. It was meant to be a suicide mission. King Doran sent them to harass the Kethrin supply lines, hoping to buy time for the main fleet to regroup. He expected them all to die. He expected wrong. Taesu stood on the bridge of his flagship, a battered carrier called the Ironwake. Around him stood his officers. They were not the best. They were not the brightest. But they were hungry. They had been discarded by an empire that did not want them. They had nothing left to lose. That made them perfect. "Listen carefully," Taesu said. "Everything you know about war is wrong. The Vazans fight with honor. They follow rules. They meet their enemies face to face and trust that strength will win. This is why they are losing." He activated the holographic display. A map of Kethrin territory appeared. "We will not fight with honor. We will fight like humans. We will attack when they are sleeping. We will retreat when they are strong. We will lie and cheat and trick them until they do not know which way is up. We will be ghosts. We will be nightmares. We will be everywhere and nowhere." An officer named Vera spoke up. She was young, scarred, and angry. Perfect command material. "What about the rules of war?" Taesu smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "There are no rules in war. There is only winning and losing. Only living and dying. The Kethrin understand this. Now we will teach them that humans understand it too." The first attack came 3 days later. A Catherine supply convoy was traveling through the nebula of tears, a cloud of dust and gas that blocked sensors and communications. They thought they were safe. They were wrong. Taesu's fleet waited in the nebula like sharks in dark water. When the convoy entered, they struck. Not from the front, not from the back, from above and below at the same time, using the nebula's interference to mask their approach. The battle lasted 12 minutes. The Catherine lost 15 cargo ships carrying weapons and food meant for their main army. Taesu lost 0 ships. Before the Catherine could respond, he was gone. Over the next 3 months, Taesu's fleet became a legend. They struck supply lines and vanished. They raided weapons depots and disappeared. They intercepted communications and fed false information to Catherine commanders, making them attack their own bases. Taesu used every dirty trick in human history. He studied the strategies of Alexander and Caesar. He borrowed tactics from the Mongols and the Vikings. He applied lessons from the world wars, from guerrilla conflicts, from every bloody chapter of Earth's violent past. The Catherine did not know how to fight an enemy like this. They were used to strength and brutality. They understood direct assault. But Taesu never gave them a direct assault. He was smoke and shadow. He hit them where they were weak and ran before they could respond. Soldiers began calling him the Pale Death. Catherine commanders put a massive bounty on his head. Stories spread through their ranks of the human who could not be caught, could not be killed, could not be stopped. Fear spread with the stories. The turning point came 4 months into the campaign. Catherine High Command was located on a space station called the Iron Throne. It was considered impenetrable. Thousands of soldiers guarded it. A fleet of warships surrounded it. No one had ever successfully attacked it. Taesu attacked it. He used captured Catherine ships to approach the station, broadcasting stolen identification codes. By the time the Catherine realized what was happening, his soldiers were already inside. What followed was not a battle. It was a slaughter. Taesu led the assault personally. He moved through the corridors of the Iron Throne like death itself, killing everyone in his path. His soldiers followed, fighting with a ferocity the Catherine had never seen. They reached the command center in less than 2 hours. High General Croth, the leader of the Catherine invasion, was waiting inside. He was massive, even by Catherine standards. 9 feet tall with arms like tree trunks. He held an energy axe that crackled with power. "So," Croth said, looking at Taesu with red eyes, "you are the human they fear. You are smaller than I expected." "Size does not matter," Taesu replied. "Only results." Croth laughed and charged. The fight was broadcast across the entire Catherine network. Millions watched as their high general attacked the human with all his strength. They expected to see the small creature destroyed in seconds. Instead, they watched Taesu dodge every blow. He moved like water around rocks. Every swing of Croth's axe hit empty air. Every punch found nothing but shadows. And slowly, steadily, Taesu began to fight back. He struck at joints and pressure points. He targeted weak spots in Croth's armor. He did not try to match the general's strength. He used the general's strength against him. The fight lasted 5 minutes. It ended with Croth on his knees, Taesu's knife at his throat. "This is the end of your invasion," Taesu said into the camera. "Your high general is defeated. Your command is broken. Surrender now, or we will come for you all." Then he killed Croth with a single stroke. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, Catherine's soldiers watched in silence. Their unbeatable leader was dead. Their fortress had fallen. Their enemy was a creature they had never taken seriously. Within a week, the Catherine began retreating from Vossen territory. Taesu returned to Vossa Prime as something he had never been before. A hero, The streets were lined with Vossen citizens. Soldiers stood at attention as his ship landed. When he stepped onto the platform, thousands of voices roared his name. But the most important moment was quieter. Lyra was waiting for him at the edge of the crowd. She wore a simple dress, not her royal robes. She looked at him with eyes full of something he had never seen from her before. Love. She walked toward him. The crowd fell silent. When she reached him, she bowed her head. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. A Vossen princess had never bowed to anyone below her station, let alone a human. "Welcome home, husband," she said softly. Taysu reached out and lifted her chin. Their eyes met. "I told you I would survive," he said. "You did more than survive," Lyra replied. "You conquered." Behind her, King Doran watched from his balcony. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. He had sent Taysu to die, and instead, the human had become the most famous soldier in the Empire. He had made a terrible mistake. And somewhere in his heart, he was afraid. The human who had been invisible was now impossible to ignore. The man they had treated like garbage had become a god of war. And everything was about to change. Taysu looked up at the purple sky. 3 moons hung above the city. Somewhere far away, Earth was spinning. His people had sent him here as a sacrifice. Now he was a legend, and he was just getting started. 2 years had passed since Han Taysu married Princess Lyra Voss. 2 years since he arrived as a political hostage. 2 years since they locked him in a servant's closet and called him a pet. Now he was Supreme Commander of the Vossen military, hero of the Empire, the man who broke the Kethrin Collective, the Pale Death. But King Doran had not forgotten how Taysu had made him look like a fool. He had not forgotten the humiliation of watching a human save his empire. And he had not forgotten his fear. Fear makes powerful men do terrible things. The king called Taysu to the great hall for what he said was a celebration of victory. When Taysu arrived, he found something very different. The hall was filled with soldiers. Not celebrating soldiers. Armed soldiers. Soldiers pointing weapons at him. King Doran sat on his throne with a cold smile. Prince Raiden stood beside him, barely hiding his excitement. General Kael Morn was there too, finally getting his revenge for being proven a fool. "Han Taysu," King Doran announced. "You are charged with crimes against the Kethrin people. Murder, torture, violations of galactic law. You will face trial and execution." Taysu stood in the center of the room, surrounded by weapons. He did not look afraid. He looked disappointed. "Crimes against the Kethrin," he repeated. "The same Kethrin who invaded your empire and killed millions of your people. Those Kethrin? War has rules," Raiden said. "You broke those rules. You fought without honor. I fought to win," Taysu replied. "That is the only rule that matters." King Doran leaned forward. "You have become too powerful, human. Too popular. The people love you more than they love me. This cannot continue. The trial will happen. The evidence will be presented. And you will die like the animal you are." Taysu looked around the room. He counted the soldiers. He measured the distances. He calculated his options. Then he smiled. "You should have brought more men." Before anyone could react, the doors burst open. Soldiers poured in, but not the king's soldiers. These were Taysu's soldiers, men and women who had fought beside him in the war. Veterans who had followed him into hell and back. They outnumbered the king's guards 3 to 1. Leading them was Vera, the young officer from the Iron Wake. She walked through the chaos like she owned the room and stood beside Taysu. "Commander," she said, "your soldiers are ready." King Doran's face went pale. "This is treason. This is justice," Lyra said. She stepped forward from the crowd. In her hands, she held a data tablet. She activated it, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed King Doran and Prince Raiden talking in private. Planning to kill Taesu. I found this recording in my father's private files, Lyra said. It shows everything. The false charges. The fake evidence. The assassination plan. He was afraid of you, husband. So he decided to destroy you. The room fell silent. King Doran looked at his daughter with hatred in his eyes. You would betray your own family? For this human? Lyra stood tall. You were going to kill my husband. The man who saved my life. The man who saved our empire. You are not my family. You are a coward. Raiden stepped forward. His face was red with rage. I demand trial by combat. It is ancient law. You cannot deny me. Everyone looked at Tae-Su. He knew what this meant. Trial by combat was a sacred Vozan tradition. If Raiden called for it, refusing would make Taesu look weak. It would turn the people against him, but accepting meant fighting a Vozan prince. A trained warrior. A man who had spent his entire life preparing for battle. Taesu smiled. I accept. The duel took place in the royal arena. Every noble in the empire was watching. Every soldier. Every citizen. The broadcast reached across Vozan space. Millions of eyes were fixed on the two fighters. Raiden was tall and powerful. He wore ceremonial armor and carried an energy blade that glowed blue in the arena lights. He looked like a hero from ancient legends. Taesu wore simple combat clothes. He carried no weapon. He looked like what he was. A human. You are making a mistake, soft blood, Raiden said. I have trained my entire life for combat. So have I, Taesu replied. But my training was not in an arena. It was in real war. Real death. Real blood. Raiden attacked. He was fast. Faster than Taesu expected. His blade cut through the air in perfect arcs. His footwork was precise. His technique was flawless. But technique is not everything. Taesu did not try to block the blade. He was not strong enough for that. Instead, he moved. He flowed around Raiden's attacks like water around stone. He let the prince swing at empty air until frustration clouded his judgment. Then he struck. A blow to the knee that made Raiden stumble. A strike to the elbow that weakened his grip. A kick to the ankle that destroyed his balance. Taesu did not fight like a Vozan. He fought like a human. Dirty. Efficient. Brutal. Within 3 minutes, Raiden was on the ground. His blade was gone. His armor was cracked. His face was bloody. Taesu stood over him with the prince's own blade in his hand. Yield, Taesu said. Raiden spat blood. Never. Kill me if you want. I will not surrender to a human. Taesu looked at him for a long moment. Then he threw the blade aside. I am not going to kill you, he said. You are not worth killing. You are a coward who hides behind his father's power. You are a bully who picks on those you think are weak. You are nothing. He turned his back on Raiden and walked toward Lyra, who was waiting at the edge of the arena. The crowd was silent. They had expected death. They had expected blood. Instead, they got mercy. It was the most devastating victory possible. King Doran was arrested that night. The evidence against him was undeniable. The High Council stripped him of his crown and exiled him to a distant moon. Raiden was sent with him. The council needed a new ruler. They looked at the most powerful person in the empire. The hero of the war. The savior of their people. They offered the crown to Tae-Su. He refused. I am not a king, he said. I am a soldier. A protector. I do not want to rule. I want to serve. Instead, he accepted the title of protector of the realm. Lyra became queen, ruling with wisdom and strength. And Taesu stood beside her, her husband in truth as well as name. Months later, Taisu stood at a window overlooking the capital. 3 moons hung in the purple sky. Ships moved through the atmosphere, carrying trade and travelers. The empire was at peace. A communication device buzzed in his pocket. He answered it. "Hello, soldier." The voice was familiar. Admiral Unipark, his former commander from Earth. "Admiral," Taisu said. "It has been a long time." "Yes, it has. I have been watching your career with great interest. The expendable soldier becomes a god of war. How does it feel?" Taisu looked out at the city. He thought about everything that had happened. The humiliation, the loneliness, the battles, the blood, the victories. "It feels like humanity finally got a seat at the table," he said. Juna laughed softly. "That you did. And what now? Are you staying there forever?" Taisu heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Lyra walking toward him. She was glowing. Her hand rested on her stomach, where their child was growing. "Yes," he said into the device. "I am staying." He ended the call and walked to his wife. He placed his hand over hers, feeling the life inside her. "Who was that?" Lyra asked. "An old friend. She wanted to know if I was coming home." Lyra smiled. "And what did you tell her?" Taisu pulled her close. He kissed her forehead. He thought about Earth, so far away. He thought about his people, still rebuilding. He thought about everything he had lost and everything he had gained. "I told her I already am." Far across the galaxy, news spread about what had happened on Vasa Prime. Other alien empires heard the story. They heard about the human who had been given as a tribute and had risen to become the most powerful warrior in an interstellar empire. They heard about the Pale, Death, the war god, the man who could not be killed, could not be stopped, could not be defeated. And for the first time in cosmic history, the galaxy looked toward Earth with something new. Not contempt, not pity, not amusement,